Okay. Okay, so it's recording. Hi there. So these 10 a.m. Q&A sessions don't have any agenda. We're just here to answer your calls. Christine was running this deck for the whole past hour and she stepped away for a minute, but she'll be back. So go ahead with your questions. Just a second. So I also should have said you can put them in the chat and then I'll call you in order. So Jamie Lynn says, for the Jamboard assignment, would you like to upload our Jam to the classroom in order to turn it in? Yes, I would like you to do that. I think I didn't put it in the Jamboard assignment at the beginning because it was too many layers of confusion. So yes, so upload the Jam and turn it in. And the purpose of the Jam assignment is not to create a fabulous product, but to give you the experience of doing that. Oh, so Jamie Lee did it. Jamie Lee, tell us what it went like.
Good morning, everybody. So my group mates and I think we had a pretty productive morning. We went through all the Jam slides and everyone was collaborating and talking and sharing about our personal experiences. It was just really neat to see from a student's perspective how this is going to work. People helping each other. How do we resize things? How can we do this? And it was just, I mean, I'm a weirdo. I love school anyway. So for me, it was just like being back in the classroom, learning myself. And it was just really great. I hope my group mates had a similar pleasant experience, but I think our product shows our collaboration, and it was just a really neat experience. So I wanted to thank you both for that assignment as well, because now I have another tool for my remote learning toolbox.
Good. It's really hard to organize with this huge group of 200 people who all have different domains with different permissions on them. So a lot of people had technical problems getting onto the chat. But this idea that you can be in a chat talking to each other and working on a document at the same time, I think is very powerful. Some people had questions about whether you can track who added what to the Jam. And in fact, Jam is so primitive that you cannot. So in a Jamboard, you can't tell who added what. So I would say that Jamboards are really good for the younger kids, 1, 2, and 3, because it's so simple. And it's also great for kids you can trust to not act like goofballs. I have to say that I would probably not use this with a lot of my middle schoolers, but you can do the exact same technique with slides. And if you put slides in, then you can track who wrote what. But this, everybody has a shared document and they're all looking at it at the same time they're talking. Who else?
Michelle?
Yes.
So it's Christine Fogarty. I missed my Jamboard session because it was this morning at 9. Can I join another group of people that may have missed it, or
no, absolutely. Go look at the the spreadsheet that I put in that has people's
there's Tuesday, August 4th, or Monday, August 3rd.
No, there's a spreadsheet in the assignment that has like.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Yeah. So if you want to go there just on your own time and pick one that looks a good time for you, send me an email and I will put you into that group.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so like choose which one is going to work for you. Let me know and I'll add you to it.
All right, great.
Christine, are you on your phone or a device?
I am on my phone. What do you need?
No, so I'll run the chat this time, just like we reversed it.
No,
last time and you can talk.
I can see the chat. I've got it.
You're all right?
Yep.
So
I have 4 people, just to Christine's comment, who will be joining other groups next week. So Christine, no worries on that.
Alicia, you said, do you have a clipping tool you recommend? I have a question for you. Are you on Chromebooks?
Yeah, at school we were on Chromebooks, but I was playing around with it on my laptop at home, trying to play around with Jamboard and clip from PDFs, some grammar stuff. Evernote, there was an Evernote extension that worked okay, but I just couldn't quite get the sizes right. So it didn't look as easy as the whatever you guys used on the tutorial.
So, Alicia, what I'm going to say is, when you're not in this meeting, go Google snipping tool and then the name of your device.
Okay.
Because every device has a slightly different way to do partial screenshots or snips. And your device is going to have one that's easy to use.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like when I do it on my, I have a Dell all-in-one, I do Shift-Alt-S, and that gives me the snipper. But it's different on different devices. And then in the Chromebook, they have a little, raise your hands if you use Chromebooks at school. So they have, I'm just going to put this up here. Can you see this? So this button here, if you do Control Shift and this button, it gives you a snipping tool.
Okay.
So I teach the kids that, Control Shift, because snipping is so useful when you find something that you want to remember or you want to put in a slide deck, you can just snip it and put that little bit, like snip, and it's copied and then go someplace else and paste. Super easy.
So Michelle, Carrie had a question about the latest version of Jamboard. She seemed to be missing some of the tools on hers.
Okay, so here's what there is. Jamboard was originally conceived as software for some physical whiteboards. And those physical whiteboards were outrageously expensive, like, I don't know, $3,000 a piece. And I'm sure that there are some tech companies that love their physical Jamboard with all this fabulous functionality, because people could be in a meeting doing this stuff and other people could be home collaborating. But of course, schools don't have that kind of budget. So they have made a simpler version of the software available as a web only. So if you go to jamboard.google.com, you get the free stuff. And I know if you're Googling like how to use Jamboard, what you might be finding are instructions for the more expensive product that's meant to be used with a physical whiteboard.
Carrie, does that answer your question? So while we're waiting for Carrie to come back, Danette also was having issues with Pear Deck. She said she got stuck on step 3 of the instructions of how to add it as an add-on, I believe. Danette, do you want to let us know what happens?
Hang on. Sorry. There we are. So I've tried many times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and every time I try to add it, it says, you know, congratulations, you're the first person at your school to add it. So and then it gets frozen. So I know I'm not the first person to add it at my school. And I did actually, just because I didn't know what else to do, I did put in a tech ticket, you know, with the tech department. And they never responded, which is a little unusual. I think it was such a stupid request, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I've been stuck since the last class. That happened, you know, in the last class I took with you. And then I did have a second question on, is there anything I need to do before joining your Jamboard? I don't really know what it's about. I know it's an app. Do I just join the meeting and then I'll find out about it? So 2 questions. Thank you.
So I can take the Jamboard question. Yep. For the Jamboard question, you're just going to join. The directions will be there. You'll be working kind of collaboratively with a group. So those will, I think, work itself out once you're in and in the link. And then as far as the Pear Deck question, Michelle, did you hear that one?
I did, and I'm not. I hear what you said, and I have no idea how to fix it. The one thing I wonder is, did you sign in with your school Gmail account, your school email account? Because it says you're the first person in your school, and yeah, I don't know why that would be.
I'll double check. Maybe I did it from my personal account instead of my school account.
So that very often happens. I do it myself all the time. So when it's always a good idea when you're doing things with accounts to just sign out of all Google accounts and sign back in purposefully to the one that you want to use. Because I have had problems with my two accounts conflicting quite frequently. In fact, the last Q&A meeting that we had, I couldn't admit people because I had signed in under the wrong account. So it's easy to do.
Thank you. I'll try that.
Yep.
So Catherine, I saw your comment about whiteboard.fi, and I want to get to that in a minute because I want to know how the kids enjoyed it and if it was easy to use. But Terry had a question about she couldn't get a link to Jamboard on her assignment. Terry, can we take your question real quick? What happened?
Yeah, so I go to the share part and I copy the link, and then I go to classwork and I go to our Jamboard assignment and I try to attach it as a link, and it says link won't attach.
So you're trying to attach it as a link in Classroom. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, to kind of turn it in, like as an, to show that we did it. So like if I go to Jamboard and under classwork and it says your work and you can add or create, and I added the link, and then it says a red box comes up and says you couldn't add link.
So if you're trying to turn it in for us, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe you have to add anything. You can just say turn it in because we already have access to all the Jamboards, so we're gonna be able to see your work regardless.
Well, actually, I would like them actually to put a link to the.
So then we're gonna put the link not as add a link, but in the private comment section, Terry. So when you go to submit it, you'll see private comments, and that's where you're gonna paste the link.
Okay. All right, I'll try that.
Okay, let us know if it didn't work.
Okay.
Yep. All right, and then Tina had a question about grid view. Tina, grid view's not working with your Google Meet?
Yes, that's right. And I had this ongoing problem in the spring too. Right now, I have added the grid view extension, and I've clicked at the bottom to change my layout.
So that's actually not where you click, believe it or not. So when you're on Google Meet, if you have the extension downloaded, you want to make sure that you can only see people's faces and that your participants window is not open. And then on your Google Meet on the top right, you should see the 9 squares. And it'll either be 9 squares open or 9 squares with an X. Not on your toolbar, but actually inside the Google Meet. That's where you click to get the grid view to work.
All right, so I'm looking at, do I want to have the people tab open? Which part? Because I don't see that waffle down in that section right now. I only see it in my toolbar.
That's okay. Will you go ahead and present your screen and I can walk you through it?
Yes.
It's a disgusting smell. Always a bonus.
All right. So do you see where it says meeting details? You want to X out next to meeting details. Good. And now do you see the 9 little boxes? There you go. Now click on that. Now you have to stop presenting, but then we'll be in grid view. So stop presenting, click on that box again, and we'll be in grid view.
Click on which box again? I'm sorry.
Those 9 squares.
Oh, okay.
And did that work?
So what I see now is what I saw before. You're in a stack, one on top of the other, instead of in a grid.
Is the nine squares in that view, does it have a line through it?
No.
I'm trying to think through it, Tina. Give me a minute, because if you present again, it's not going to show what it should, right? Because it will show you presenting your screen.
Right.
But if you click on those 9 squares, there are some little options you can do, like show me in the grid. Do you see those options?
So it says only show participants with video, highlight speakers, include yourself in the grid, enable grid view by default. And I don't have checked only show participants with video. Everything else is checked right now.
What's the second one after the only show participants?
Highlight speakers.
Yep, so uncheck that.
Okay.
And now go back.
How many pairs of sneakers do you have?
Go back to what?
Does that fix it once you unclick that button?
No, it's the same.
All right, Terry, let me look into that.
Okay.
I don't know another kind of workaround to get that grid view. Oh, Michelle thinks she has it. Michelle, go ahead.
No, I don't. I do not have the answer to the grid view.
Okay. So Terry, let me look into it and I'll get back to you of why that's not functioning. Sometimes I had to on mine when I had just too much in my cache. I actually had to empty my cache and then I had to uninstall the extension and install it again. Sometimes the video just takes up when we're using it so much space in our computer that you just have to kind of like refresh the whole piece. But let me look into it.
I appreciate it, Christine. Thank you.
No problem.
And
all right, Michelle.
I would say that this is a generally good piece of advice. If an extension that's worked before is like getting kind of glitchy, I found this with Screencastify. I uninstall the extension, shut my computer down, restart, install the extension again, and then it works.
Okay,
So,
I'll give it a try too.
Yeah, I think with all of us using so much video conferencing that it does take up a lot of like space, hidden space on your computer. That's called the cache. And then things start not working right.
Great. Thank you.
Jamie, I think, is up with the next question. Is Jamie still in the chat? I don't see her.
There's 2 of us. I didn't have a question, so perhaps the other Jamie?
Oh, Jamie Lynn Flanders, you had said me. I thought that was you had a question, but it must be that happened.
No, that was the response to the raising your hand thing.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, Michelle.
So then Terry asked a question. In Jamboard, there were some extra pages added at the end, which are blank. How can you delete those without affecting the other pages? I'm going to share my screen and answer that. So I'm going to present my entire screen. And then I'm going to go over into a Jamboard. Right? So you see up here at the top, it says that I'm on slide 8 of 8. If you are on the last slide and you click this arrow, it adds more slides. So see, now there are 10 slides. So somebody must have done that. If you click on this, little down arrow that says expand frame bar, then you get all of the slides in this order. And when it's looking like this, you can go to the more button and do delete and delete. So you can delete just one slide without impacting the other slides.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think we've addressed all of the messages in the chat. If someone else has a question.
Although I'm going to add on what Maggie said.
Go ahead.
Maggie said we had this issue this spring in Hudson and we were told that Google Meet has created their own grid view. I'm going to tell everybody, don't get too stressed about Google Meet right now, because I am told that they are rolling out tons of new features in time for the new school year. So some of these things that we've been doing workarounds for are going to be built into Meet. And depending on what your district subscribes to, you might have those built in, or you might be on a cheaper version where you have to still keep using the extensions to make it more robust. So look out for Google Meet updates.
Yes. Anyone else with questions, comments, or concerns that we haven't said? You can go ahead and feel free to unmute or type it in the chat. There's only, I think, 16 of us.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of trouble. I'm actually very confused as this thing rolls out as to where I'm supposed to be looking and what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm stuck really at the very beginning here with this Jamboard thing for today. I'm supposed to change my email address on the Google Sheet, but I can't do it because it's view only. So my calendar doesn't show my meeting for later on today. And I'm stuck. I don't know where to go from here.
Alex, I'm gonna apologize and say this was a little bit of a workaround because we had so many people with different emails. So I had that thing where I asked you to change your email open for a couple of days. And then at a certain point, I froze it because I had already set up the meetings. So,
okay.
And you won't have all these problems with your kids because you're all in the same domain. We have so many problems with different domains. So can you send me an email telling me, no, you don't even have to do that. Alex, I am going to, after this meeting, I will go in and manually change everything that I have for you to the same Gmail that you are in the class with.
Okay.
Because I think that's the issue. I think we have two different emails for you out in our.
Well, yeah, once I signed in with my school email and then like just probably like everybody else, yeah.
Yeah. And this is a big problem when you're working with people from a lot of districts, but it won't be a problem when you're working just with your kids. So I'm sorry that that's been frustrating for you. And I wanted to apologize to you personally because it seemed like the last Q&A session you had a hard time getting in.
I couldn't get in. I just gave up.
Right. And that is completely my fault. Remember how I'm always telling people you have to be careful what identity you're in because it causes all kinds of trouble? Well, for that meeting, I accidentally logged into the meeting with my personal Gmail instead of my work Gmail, which was the host of the meeting. And during the entire meeting, I didn't realize that I had made that mistake. So because I was logged in not as the host, but as another person, I was not getting all the meeting requests.
You were just getting ones from Worcester.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Or one. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's important too, because I know that as a parent, I have kids with two different domains for their schools, and I have a third domain. And I found the same trouble in remote learning where I would get frustrated because my child couldn't get into the assignment. I had to be like, oh yeah, that's right. We have to log out of this and go into the different domain. So just kind of learning that and being able to tell parents that, right, that this is going to happen. It's okay. You just have to log out and come back in this way. And we're all going to be doing this at some point. We're all going to be in the wrong domain at some point.
And I have to say that during remote learning this term, I did not personally have experience with how bad this was because I'm an ESL teacher and I'm teaching mostly newcomers this year. And newcomers are people whose family have moved here with a suitcase. And newcomers don't have stuff at their house. And so none of my kids, except for I think 3, even had devices other than their phones. So the problem that I was dealing with was having kids do work exclusively on their phones, but I didn't personally have a lot of the problem with domains from parents, siblings messing up with kids being able to get into our work. And I've since found that has been a big problem for a lot of families where the kids are not using school devices, but are using their family's personal devices. And I know in this class, several people logged into the Google Classroom. They joined the Google Classroom with somebody else's identity, their spouse, their child. So it's something that we just all have to be aware with.
So Roseanne had a question about where the Jamboard link was, if it was in the calendar. She said she was able to get in once she was in the meet.
Yeah, I attached them. I attached them to the calendar just because manually creating the groups in Google Classroom for 200 people would have taken me hours and hours and hours. So I put them in the calendar meet.
Alex, we answer your question?
Yeah, she's going to fix it. So I'm looking at, so I'll have, it'll come off my calendar from my school email and show up on my calendar on this email, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I am not good enough at multitasking to do it during our meeting, but I have it written in big letters right here on my notebook, and I will do it right after the meeting.
All right, and so our Jamboard is up there, and we're supposed to work on it. And I did not understand that other stuff that you spoke about before this, about the meets grid. I don't know what that is.
So it's an extension called Grid View so that you can see multiple people on your meet at the same time. And that's in the classroom under Google Meet, and the videos and kind of the explanations of how that works.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you find it, Alex?
Yeah, I saw it before. Right, but I didn't try it. Okay, thank you.
No problem. And then Roseanne, did we answer your question?
Sort of. But I was just wondering, I wanted to see, because if I were to post links and stuff, I was trying to figure out a way to do it. And so like if I go, like I was assuming if I click Google Calendar in Classroom, it would be posted in there, right?
So Roseanne, I'm going to tell you how I would do it if I were doing this for my kids.
Okay.
I actually posted a video. Let me see what it's called. Wait 1 second. In Jamboard. Let me just make sure it's where I think it is. In the Jamboard assignment, I have a 9-minute video in setting up the Jamboard, how I would do it for kids. So you can take a look at that. But basically, this calendar thing that I did for our group was just a workaround.
Okay.
Because I thought it would be too hard to do 200 different people in different groups when I have it on a list. What I would do if I have my kids, let's say I have a class that has 20 students, right? So I have a Google Classroom with 20 students. Yep. I'm going to make my Jamboard and I want to put them into 4 groups. So I'm going to take the Jamboard that I have, I'm going to make a copy and call it Group A. And then I'm going to make another copy of the Jamboard, call it Group B.
Okay, I started watching that part of the video. I just didn't finish because I had to get in the meeting.
And it's so long. So you have like a separate Jamboard for each group.
Right.
And then you set up an assignment in Google Classroom. Hey, kids, this is what I want you to do.
Yep.
And in the top right corner, you can assign it to all students.
Oh, like check the kids.
Or you can deselect all students and just select the 5 students that are in Group A.
Okay.
And then you attach the Group A Jamboard.
Right.
And the Group A Google Meet link. Right? Or maybe you're using your Classroom Meet link. But and so that is an assignment that only the kids in Group A are going to see. Then you can go in and do, like, for reuse assignment, you can say, is it reuse assignment? Is that what it says?
Yeah, I think reuse post.
Reuse post. So it's like create, reuse post. And then you just copy that exact same thing that you did. And you go, delete Jamboard A, instead put in Jamboard B. And for the students, select the students that are in group B.
Got it.
And so it's ridiculous to me that Google Classroom does not have a better groups feature. And I'm sure that coming down the line, they'll figure that out. But for remote learning, I might have some kind of static groups that exist for a while, and then so you could have an assignment called group A, group work. And then you just keep reusing those posts.
Right.
So you don't have to redo it each time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
And you could do the exact same thing with a shared slide deck, the exact same thing with a shared Google Doc. And you put it in as edit. So those 5 people in group A all have editing privileges on that thing, but nobody else does.
Right.
And in my experience, a shared doc works, unless you are in the classroom closely supervising, a shared doc works better with a smaller group of kids rather than the entire class, because they feel more accountable to each other.
Right.
In a small group.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, Michelle, I don't see anything else in the chat unless someone else has a question.
Can I just ask a really quick question? I just had a Jamboard, meeting or whatever, and I copied the link. I had to send it to my school email because I couldn't get in. I copied the link from my school email. I'm so sorry. And
Thank you.
I'm trying to paste the link and it says dismissed. It won't let me paste the link in so I could submit it as done. I don't know if anybody else.
So, Maureen, when we paste the link, we don't want to add it as a link. We want to paste it as a private comment in the classroom, like where you would turn in your assignment. There's a place for private comment. Is that where you're trying to paste it?
I see. Okay, I missed that when somebody was talking about submitting. So I appreciate that. So just put it in the private comment.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Christine, do you want to answer Alex's or shall I?
Why don't you? Because I'm in the car and I'm sure you can hear the feedback from the wind. Yes.
Okay. So Alex, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what we did was synchronous collaboration. And so in this Google Meet, the talking is important. And so you can use Jamboard for synchronous collaboration, but you can also absolutely do it asynchronously.
No, my question was that does Jamboard have a function where you're talking to the other people in your group?
Nope. That's why you have to do Google Meets.
So you have to have them both running at the same time so that they can talk to each other while they're looking and working at the Jamboard together.
Yes. Although I will tell you what, in real life, when I had my kids working on something together, I think they were talking through their video games that they were playing while they were working on it. Like, I don't actually care if they come up with some other way to talk to each other. But in Google, you have to set them up with a separate meeting because Jamboard is a very simple platform. It doesn't have embedded video.
Okay, so we should start off with having them. Can we set up a Google Meet for a group? I mean, so that you're assigning them a group. Can you give them a link to a Google Meet group that goes along with the link for the Jamboard?
Right. This is actually what I wanted to do for this class, and I was unable to. The settings in Google Meet, and they might change because it's undergoing change. But the way it has been is when I set up a Google meeting in my domain, I can make my presence optional. But that only works for everybody who's in the same domain. So I couldn't do it in this PD that we're doing. But what you can do is you can create a group A meeting link, a group B meeting link, a group C meeting link, and then you can post that like in the Google slide that they're working on or in the Google document that they're working on. So at any time that they're working on it, they can click on it and go to the meet together. Now, I would probably not do that for middle school students. But high school students, I wouldn't have a problem. I mean, if you're happy with them being in a Google link that you're not monitoring, that will work. You can set up a link that they can go to anytime, whether or not you're on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What would be the downside of that, of having them have a link that they could talk to each other when you're not there? I mean, I don't see a downside.
Because they might bully each other in an area that is controlled by your school district.
So, for example, in Worcester, it was required that a teacher was present in any group meeting. And that was just part of our policies for our district to make sure that it was a safe learning environment for all students. So I think it's really kind of district dependent, class dependent, student dependent. The point here that what do we want to do? We want to model synchronous consensus building. We really want the kids to be working together on something, even though they're not in the same building. But we also have to make sure that they're doing that safely. And so depending on your group of students and, you know, kind of how they're able to interact with each other, especially where with remote learning, we're going to still be building relationships with them without meeting them, right? So I think that is the benefit to having you in the meeting and monitoring versus them working on their own. But again, it's up to your district in your own classroom style.
Well, I mean, I've got 5 classes and let's say 6 groups in each class. So if we break into groups, I can't be at every group. That just can't happen. So
a couple things, Alex. You teach high school, right?
Right.
So depending on the policies of your district, it might be completely fine for you to not be in their group. And you don't have to run all the groups all at the same time. So today when I had 10 groups going, the only thing I could do was admit new members. But I had them all up at the same time. I had myself muted. I had my camera muted. And I had my sound turned off on my camera. And I really even couldn't send chats very well because it was really tapping me out on bandwidth. But technically, I was sort of overseeing their groups, and I had the power to go in at each time. So you might say, like, period 4 is going to have collaborative group meetings at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And you could have, as the teacher, you could be in all 4 of those meetings at the same time, but have your camera turned off and your mute and your sound turned off and just kind of be an observer of it. So they're basically working on their own.
Oh.
Or you could schedule different groups to work at different times and you could join their group. Because what I have found is that a big Zoom meeting or a big Google Meet meeting, if you've got 20 kids, many people do not feel comfortable participating in that way. But if you can get it down to 4 or 5, they will.
Yeah. So you can set it up so you have all those groups running and you can see them. You can see, well, I guess they're, well, what do you see on the screen then if you have a group? And
you know what? I made a video of it when I was doing this last session that we had in Jamboard, and I'm going to put it out. So I'll show you what it looked like.
Okay.
Yeah. So I basically just took my windows, you know, my big window, and I made them really small. So I had 10 small Chrome windows open, and in each one was one of the meetings. So I was looking at them all, and whenever somebody asked to join the meeting, I could see that, and I clicked admit.
So you made each meeting in its own, like, whatchamacallit?
Chrome tab.
On your Chrome tab, yeah. Okay.
And it was a bit challenging to do with 10, but I would think that it would be no problem at all to do with 4, for example.
6, yeah.
And depending on how your district has their settings done, you might not need to actually admit them. You can probably have it set up so that anybody in your district who's on the invite can just enter. So the way that it worked with our meetings that we're doing now, I give you all, I invite you to these meetings, and because of different district settings, about 2/3 of the people can just come in without asking, and about 1/3 need to come in with me admitting them. And these are problems that you have when you're dealing with people from different domains that you won't have in your school domain. However it's set in your school domain will be consistent. So once you figure out whether you need to admit people or you don't need to admit people, however the IT people have set it up, that should be consistent.
Okay.
Roseanne?
Yep.
Don't add that link as add link. Add it in the private comments.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And then that'll work.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yep. Alex, are you like sort of good at this point?
So I think so. I'm looking at the Jamboard slides now, and just trying to figure out how is this supposed to work with brainstorm barriers.
So
Right.
when are you scheduled to be in a Jamboard?
2:00.
Okay, so at 2:00, by 2:00, I'll have your invitation fixed. Basically, you're all going to go into the meet at the same time, and you're all going to go into the Jamboard at the same time.
Okay, so we are doing both, but that's okay. Now I got it.
Okay, so you're going to
So
talk
we're
about
doing
it. You're going to play with it. Is there anybody else here that was on the Jamboard this morning that wants to talk about it a little bit?
I was, Michelle. Maureen.
You got in. How did it go?
So I had a little difficulty because I was dual enrolled in my personal email in the school. So that was just a glitchy thing Michelle and Christine helped me through. But once we were on, it was fun. It was fun for me. I have never used it. It's pretty easy. Jess Collins from Worcester took control, and so she was the facilitator, and she kept us moving on the slides. You can write. I find it easier to use the sticky notes. I think it's difficult to write. I can't use cursive with my EL, my English learners, so I think it's easier to use the sticky notes, and all you do is click to the left, get a sticky note, type right on them, and submit it or enter it or send it, whatever, and then it kind of stays there. So you have to click outside the sticky note to get back to the main screen. But I think it's fun,
Okay.
Once we were in there was no problem. We had a lot of quiet people, I mean, I think everybody can choose what they want to contribute. We had a lot of quiet people, and Jess and I both have big mouths.
And Maureen, if I was doing this with kids, the protocol that many teachers use of assigning roles in a meeting.
Yeah, definitely that would help.
So I might even have, what do I say? Like Google Sheets that has the roles of the meeting, and then do a snip of that for each group and put it right on the Jamboard.
That's a great idea.
I couldn't make it work with 200 people from all different domains with different email addresses. But for teaching, I might do that. Put the roles right on the Jamboard.
Would you have everybody be a reporter, or would you just have one person doing the actual writing? Or
no, I would have everybody be writing on the Jamboard,
because that's the point.
So maybe a reporter is not necessary for this kind of activity because the report is the Jamboard, right?
Right.
Or like
it could be that a
sorry, go ahead,
student
Christine.
might I said it could be that a student might take responsibility for each different slide on the Jamboard. So like you're the leader of slide A, you're the leader of slide B. So that forces each student kind of take responsibility at least one point during the meeting.
Those are great ideas. I'm going to write those down. But if anybody's nervous about using it, if you've never used it like me, it's kind of fun and easy.
I agree. I thought it was fun, but the only thing I was thinking is it would take a lot of not scaffolding, but like pre-teaching, because we were just playing around with it for a long time. Like we're adults and we were like, oh, cool, look, you can make the font thicker, and you know what I mean? So we were playing around with it. So I feel like you'd have to like field all of those, maybe have like if we are remote, then you would have like a Google Meet where you're just playing with it. Like, all right, everybody get in. And like, so the assignment for today is like that first slide, like put your name and put a picture and whatever, you know what I mean? And like, maybe the last slide is like, oh, include a question that you have after playing with it. Cause it was just like, there's so much stuff. Like if you've never used it, then I feel like, I mean, it's overwhelming because there's so many different things you can do. And so like, I don't know, that was like the one thing. It is easy and like, but the accountability thing still sticks for me, like knowing and making sure kids write their name on their sticky and stuff like that. Just like little things that you have to make sure you like think about before you end up using it. But otherwise it's pretty cool.
And if I were going to do this exact PD again, I would get on with bigger groups and sort of talk them through it, because it was more difficult for some people than I expected. So you're right, Roseanne.
Yeah, I would do something fun to pre-teach it, like Roseanne said. It was overwhelming. I'm a processor, so it's kind of like all at once, and you've got to get the rhythm of it.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I find that my kids are much better at stuff like this than adults are.
I agree.
I mean, they're not good at everything, but the sort of like, you know, add doohickeys to something, they are masters of that.
Yeah, they tend to be much more intuitive with new technology on how to find all those little extra pieces. So I think Tina also had a question, Michelle, in the chat. Hard time creating and then adding a slide.
So let me share my screen. And just a second, present now. So Jamboard is super simple, but it is also not very robust. So it's not like Google Slides where you can like import a slide. The only way you can add slides is to go to the end. Well, actually, yeah, is to go to the end and click Create Frame. So that adds another slide. And then once you have this extra slide, you can drag it and put it someplace else. Or you can delete the slide, or if you can duplicate a slide. So for example, when we had the brainstorming where you're all just putting stuff there, you could duplicate that slide and then on the next slide rearrange everything so that you have one version that has everything and then a duplicate one where you then sort it. If that makes sense. Oh. I'm sorry, Tina. So Christine's jumping off. So bye, Christine. Thank you. And I can stay for a few more minutes. Can I, let me just model this for you. Who was the asking? Tina. Can you guys give me thumbs up if you couldn't hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to present my screen. I'm going to go into my entire screen. So So I'm going to get rid of this. So I'm going to go into Google Slides. So I'm just going to do slides. And I'm going to create a new slide. And it is a beautiful day. So if you're going to turn something into a picture, you want the words to basically fill up the box. So I'm going to make my text box be the same size as the slide. And I'm going to put it in the middle like this. And then I'm just going to keep making the font bigger until it's too big, and then back up a little bit. Or you could also like type a number, 120. So 120 is too big. So maybe 110. Oh yeah, that looks great. Okay, it is a beautiful day. And then I'm going to change the background color. I'm going to change this to like this bright blue. Okay, so I now have a slide that looks like this. I go File, Download, JPEG. So it's this untitled presentation, and I know that on my computer it goes to downloads. So now I'm going to go into a Jamboard, and I'm going to create a new jam. I'm going to insert picture. I'm going to select a file from my device. And there's that image that I just created. And then I can do what I want with it. And see, the people that are in the Jamboard can't accidentally delete modify the words. It's just, it is what it is. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's super helpful. Thank you.
And I'm gonna get rid of my presenting. This technique of taking a little bit of text and putting it into a slide and downloading that slide is so useful for so many things. Like, for example, in a Google form, you can give students a little piece of text that they're going to analyze in the question and then answer. So you could put the question in the Google form and then insert a picture and have like a little short paragraph or, a text excerpt, and then the answers that they choose. Or you can use this technique to make something that you put into a Kahoot. So for Maureen, if you're doing vocabulary, you can use an example sentence that's nicely formatted as the image in the Kahoot, and then you can ask a question about it in the question of the Kahoot. So this technique of using slides to make an image of words is great. You can also use it to make your prompt, right? That you then put inside a Google Doc where people are going to write. And then that way, kids are less likely to mess up with your instructions accidentally, because it's just like a block. I know sometimes when people type their instructions or type their writing prompt into Google Docs, the student then goes and just deletes it and writes their words over it or something. So I think the image that's bright is a different color. Kids leave it alone somehow, but more. So Tina, are you good?
Yes, thank you. Super helpful.
You're welcome. Catherine, can you have 2 or more different Jamboards? Yes, you can create multiple Jamboards. The weird thing about Jamboards is, although they're technically in your drive, you can't move them to a folder easily. You can there is a way to do it if you're in Shortcuts, but basically I think it works better to just go to jamboards.google.com and think of all of your Jamboards as living there. Okay, so it's 11. Does anybody else have a question that they need answered? because I'm happy if somebody needs a question answered. We good? Okay, so
Yep. Thank you, Michelle.
thanks so much. See you next time.
Thank you.
And then
Thank you.
you're welcome.